Welcome to another Mailbag episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. I'm Adam, and with me today are Terry and Kyle, and we are sitting down to go over a bunch of questions that you guys have for us. 20 questions, as a matter of fact. It's a D20 table, and we're going to go through them in order. The way that this works, in case you haven't listened to any of the other couple dozen of these that we've done so far, if this is your first one, buckle up. We say that we always answer whatever you send us. No holds barred, although there really fucking should be. I used
to resist it a bit more. I used to resist it. I was like, I just don't want to hit this face on. I'm going to end up getting in trouble or something. And now I'm like, I think I've learned how to deal with it a bit more. So,
you're almost hoping to be canceled.
I remember the first few were like, what's your favorite sex position and shit? And like, you remember the look on Dan's face and how he was like bright red, and we made him answer the question before we just like skirted it and ran away and mocked him for it.
And unfortunately, the internet is forever. So then it's like, well, there you go. There's that. So
yeah.
Now he doesn't do the podcast anymore. I'm sure it's unrelated. So we are going to do it a little bit differently than we normally do. The only rule is that we will definitely answer patron questions that have come in, and then whatever else ends up on our subreddit in the pinned thread for the mailbag questions, which I guess I should actually refresh here soon. So anyway, if you have other questions, if you would like us to elaborate on more shit that we talked about today, or there's anything you want to talk about, hopefully D&D, preferably pop culture, but really we will do our best to answer anything. Make sure that you can reach out through Reddit. The subreddit is at It's a Mimic, and of course there's our patron Discord for all the Patreon subscribers. So let's jump into it. Let's roll dice and see who's going to have to answer first. We'll re-roll a couple times as we go through the episode, but
right, okay. Oh, that one.
6.
17.
Kyle, you are in the danger zone right now.
Oh, the hot seat.
You.
All right. So the very first question is from Diggly Blue Moonya, and it says, on an episode a long time ago, someone said that they eat dragon hearts to buff max hit points for characters. Mm-hmm. I added that to my game, and also the idea that you could scry on kobolds by using a dragon eyeball like a crystal ball. What would you have dragon horns, dragon scales, or dragon tongues do to make the game more interesting?
Oh, this is a good question. This is one of those questions where it deserves more time. Right?
There was a question for horns, scales, or tongues. Let's each pick one, and Kyle, you get to go first because you rolled the highest. So
right.
Okay. Let's go. Oh, let's go horns, because that's a different one. Oh, you know what? I would turn it into a horn, like so you could summon things. Like maybe the spirit of the dragon.
That's cool. It's like a summoning horn for what, like a ghost dragon?
Dragon? Like the ghost of the dragon. Like you blow into the horn and then it summons the soul back from whatever kind of afterlife the dragons have.
That's pretty cool. I like that. I think that I'm gonna do, the scales, I guess I'll do. So Terry, you're on tongues.
Okay.
For dragon scales, I've actually had Dragon Scale show up as a guitar pick for a bard, which gave them bonuses on all of the role-playing skills. Whenever they were playing their guitar, they could persuade or intimidate because of there'd be a big charisma boost. So they would have advantage if they were using the Dragon Scale as a guitar pick. But that was from a young dragon. By the time that you hit Ancient or Great Worm, I figure those things are as big as shields, right?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Like, did they cut it out? Nope, they just murdered a baby dragon.
Yeah, they just straight up murdered a young dragon, yes. I guess, yeah, the answer is armor, right? And then I would just tie it to whatever the breath weapon element is, right? And then you would have resistance to that. So maybe you have to attune to it and you get resistance a certain number of times equal to your proficiency modifier so that it's not always active, right? But you can pop that off if you desperately need to.
All right. I was thinking using it as to build like a ship out of as well.
Oh, that'd be good. Especially one of the swimming dragons.
Yeah.
Oh, and then like the sail is made out of a wing.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Oh, that'd be terrifying.
Terry, what do you have for dragon tongues?
Oh, tongues is tough. What's the right answer here? It's trying to get you to do the breath weapon, right? And I feel like what I started using as draconic gifts, the something associated specifically with that dragon. So if you kill a black dragon, you can be amphibious for a minute. once once a day. I feel like you could tie that to the tongue. You can make that connection. So I'll do that.
Yeah, I think the other obvious answer is you can speak Draconic, but I mean, all my players
Right.
already do because it's one of the three
Yeah.
languages they always pick.
Yeah. Or maybe you learn the languages that the dragon knew.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll amend my answer to that.
What if you like replaced your tongue with the dragon's?
First of
Were you able
all, how would that fit in your mouth?
Yeah.
the same thing like the guitar pick. Like you do it to a youngling dragon
Yeah, okay.
or cut it down. But I mean, yeah, you could speak with the dragon's voice, so you get better intimidation checks.
What's thaumaturgy means that you can like have a big booming voice. I think one of the draconic gifts from biz bands is something like that, where you can project your voice and command a room. So I would just give them that if they were to slap a dragon tongue in their mouth.
What is it called? I think it's called a shield of yelling or shield of crying or something, where it's a magic item that cries out. I did it as a shield of roaring in my campaign, so it was a dragon roar from
Oh, that's
shield.
cool. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. King of Rot says, I think we all agree that dragons, clearly all of these questions came in, like you're going to see that there's some themes here that obviously people heard an episode and inspired a couple of people.
Yeah.
King of Rot says, I think we all agree that dragons in their dragon form can use their front limbs as arms and hands. That being said, I feel that there's nothing stopping them from wielding really cool swords. Like big hunks of sharp steel probably aren't super useful for a dragon, because that seems clunky to me. But maybe you haven't considered magic super swords or just magical weapons in general. Then he says, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals, I present you an ancient dragon wielding an Empyrean's maul. Will my players hate me if I do this? Should I do it anyway?
I love it.
I always love the idea of a dragon just picking up a giant's weapon and going to fucking town, right? Like, I think it's really neat.
Yeah, and why not? I feel a blue dragon would do that. That fits right in with a blue dragon character as well.
Bronze as well.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. And don't stop at sword. Basically, you can do any weapon, can't you? You could make it work.
I love the idea of an ancient dragon picking up a ballista and using it like a crossbow.
This is I'm running a dragon campaign. This is next week. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm learning from this podcast, people.
Kyle, you have any insights?
If I would say, okay, so personally, I wouldn't use it because it feels awkward for their physiology, because you don't really see a dragon standing on hind limbs.
You did a lot in the artwork in previous editions, but you're right. We don't get that so much in 5th ed. There's some, but there's not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think King of Rot should totally do it. Like, yeah, fuck him up with a big hammer. I don't think I would. I also I don't know. My personal view on dragons is that they would disdain picking up a weapon because they've got all they need with their claws and their hands and their magic.
Yeah, like you feel like that would sully the draconic nature of a red dragon's ego.
Yeah.
Right. To use a humanoid's weapon.
Yeah, that's what my food does.
All right, we're out.
I would still do it. I think it would be a really cool set piece to have them pick up a gigantic fucking, like, off of one of the massive statues, like a colossus, right? That hang over.
Right.
They pick it up and swing it once, then let it go and go do the dragony thing. But I just think it'd be a really cool fuck off, awesome set piece moment.
Okay, I can see them throwing a weapon.
Yeah,
but not wielding it, right? Like there's a castle that they want to knock down, so they'll take that colossus sword and then just hawk it and just obliterate a tower.
I feel like it's almost more likely that they will pick up the whole damn colossus and drop it from 500 feet.
Yeah.
There we go, Terry. Another conversation where we're just picking up and dropping shit from dragons.
I don't bring it up anymore. I think I said it
know.
twice.
That one just came naturally.
I've defended myself so many times, but I'm going to do it one more time. Said it twice. It was a single part of the larger plan, which was, I think there was like water involved in one or something, and then the end of it was drowning. It's been a different thing, you guys.
Well, it's just such a good idea that people don't think about, right? Like
Right.
the other one that it gets traction every once in a while in a comment or a discussion that I see. People will bring up what we said about white dragons, where they swim and they hang out by ice flows. They would get underneath you, swim under, and blast their breath weapon up like geysers through the ice. Like, it's such a good idea that people don't think about. Every once in a while, we will come up with a stroke of genius, usually completely by fucking accident. You talk enough, and something good will happen. And but that one I think is probably the most famous good idea that we've had about dragons.
Okay, I have something like that. Okay, do you know how orcas hunt seals in the Arctic?
Yeah.
What they'll do is they'll swim together as a pod and create a wave when they're like on an ice floe. So the wave will come up, wash the seals off it, or they'll like tip over the whole ice floe with the seals on it.
They're nasty.
I've
They're
seen a
not
video
nice.
of that, and it's wild.
And we're because we're Vancouverites, it's pretty common here. Orcas, that's literally our hockey team. But
I went out whale watching. I can't remember, was it no, it was 2019. We did a big whale watching thing, and it was epic. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool.
The next question, Terror Pickle asks, what is the recipe for the food, the main dish or baked good that you cook the best? What's your signature piece?
The food.
Signature dish.
You know what I'm pretty good with is I don't know what I'm exceptional at. Like I can cook, like I get a barbecue going and get some chicken breast on there, make it taste good, and then I can whip up a summer salad with some some nuts and some strawberries and stuff. Like I eat like an adult, but I don't think I have like a signature. I was just gonna exactly what I just said. Like I can cook for myself, but I don't know.
Yeah. You're British. Nobody expects much from you.
Yeah, Terry knows how to work a pub. That's how that works, right?
Yeah.
Kyle, what's your signature cooking piece?
Okay, so normally if I'm going to like a party where I have to bring something, I will make bruschetta with goat cheese and balsamic reduction. But I did just make like this amazing beef and barley stew the other day. Still thinking about it.
My signature go-to dish. So Mieka is on record as absolutely fucking hating noodles and anything pasta related, unless I cook it, because I make a fucking mean tomato sauce, and I dress it up. I'm a big believer in pull the meat out of your sauce and make it just be veggies only. But a vegetarian doesn't mean like vegan or organic or anything. I'm just like zucchini and like depending on the mood I'm in, I'll even throw corn in sometime into the sauce. But like I have perfected that. I lived below the poverty line for a number of years. I learned how to make pasta go far, right?
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
I've learned how to spice it. I gotta say, it's probably the best thing that I'm at that I can do.
That's good. I
It's
think
great
you need to be able to cook when you're in 30s for sure.
Yeah.
Adam, I know you just turned 40, but I still include you in this conversation.
Thank God.
But you got something suspicious about a guy in his 30s that can't cook anything at all. It's not good.
You know the story? I think Dan has told the story on the podcast before, but when he was in his 20s, he ordered from Domino's Pizza every day like clockwork for like literally months. And there came a point where he decided he wanted to learn how to cook, and he stopped ordering pizza. The pizza place called him and said, "Hey, we didn't get your order today. Is everything okay?" They did a wellness check on him. So total sidebar, Dan is one of the best cooks I know, and he actually worked in a kitchen for a while. So like, I'm not throwing shade at Dan on that, but that's such a 20-year-old thing to do.
Just a good story. Dan's a diamond. That's hilarious.
Good on him for turning it around, like I'm proud of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also important, right? Yeah.
I wonder how much that lines up with the release of World of Warcraft, where he just couldn't get away from
it wasn't a big life-changing decision. There was just something else unhealthy that became a new vice.
Yeah. Our next question is from Iron Mag 44. What's your top 3 picks for non-Wizards of the Coast source or inspiration books or PDFs for more inspiration and help for developing a more unique D&D experience?
Oh man, I'm really glad about this question because I totally forgot about it. But Grim Hollow.
Yes.
Oh, that thing is great.
Grim
Hands down. I love fucked up, weird ass monsters.
That's a game, Grim Hollow? Sorry, I don't know Grim Hollow. What is Grim Hollow?
No, it's third party. It's a third party book that's just like I remember it being built for previous editions, but like the 5th edition one is awesome. They're just totally fucked up creatures, and
okay.
I believe some people have made minis of them. Like you can 3D print the minis of these creepy, gross creatures, but it's very, very dark and horror.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Nice.
Makes me think of kind of like Ravenloft.
Yeah.
I think for me, for one which I'm using more and more all the time now, and do we consider him mainstream at this point, is Matt Colville. I think his books are fantastic, and I'm running a Dragon War right now, so Strongholds and Followers. I've been using especially. It's fantastic. I can't believe he's done so well. I now consider him to be mainstream.
Yeah, I consider him to be what, like, there's Wizards of the Coast and then the Mats, right? There's two of them.
Yeah.
There's Mercer and Coville, right? I guess the other one that I normally would pitch here would be Keith Amon's. He's got a website, but he extrapolated to a great degree in a number of books. The Monsters Know What They're Doing. And
you've told me about this one before.
yeah, these books are phenomenal for breaking down the stats and the abilities and what they mean. It's not your standard book. Like, it looks like a novel on my shelf. You open it up, it reads like a textbook, but you can go to the monster that you want, and in a page and a half, it will tell you the difference between a goblin and a hobgoblin and a nilbog and a bugbear and a bugbear chief and a goblin boss and like, he breaks it all down and says, hey, this one is going to act this way because of its intelligence. It'll retreat at roughly this level because of its, if it has pack tactics, then you need to watch how many other people or other creatures or allies are on the battlefield before it's going to change the tactics to then focus on this. And like, he really extrapolates and breaks down everything. The first book is the Monster Manual. The second book is Volos and Tome of Foes. And this third book is about playing all of the subclasses in the player's handbook. And the fourth book is how to run layers. And it is the most strategic shit. I like to use it against my players on a regular basis. I showed Megan this book, and she actually sat in on a Legend Lore where we broke down these books, and she loved it. It gave her a lot more confidence as well, breaking down stat blocks for the podcast. But the really cool thing about it is that most people don't know it's out there, and it's just a wealth of information. And he deserves your money. It's like, it exists in bookstores. So I have bought mine off of a shelf, and I haven't ordered them, right? Like, they're out there. They sit in the gaming section of your, big bookstore, and nobody buys it. They're really fucking good.
Wow.
I think the next question is Iron Meg 44 again asks, have the Mimics tried the WizKids game Onslaught? If so, how do they feel about the game? And will you or will you not incorporate the mechanics into your campaigns? Or why will you not? Have you guys played this?
Full disclosure, never heard of it.
I haven't played it. I looked into it. It looks amazing. I watched a video on it. It looked really, really cool. We used to do board games on Friday nights that turned into Call of Cthulhu, and we're on hiatus, I think, probably till the new year. I would love to bust out this one and really sink my teeth into that Dragonlance one as well, that was about running armies and things. So as soon as we can get the three of us and Dave and James and Sean together, like, we should sit down and dig into some of this shit again. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd be down.
We should put a poll out or something, see if we can get a day. We can find a day.
That would be a really good idea. Like, sit down at like noon and just give her on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Tarzan of the Desert says, I know as a whole the members of the podcast aren't min-maxers, but what are some of your favorite multi-class / cross-class characters that you played, and what ideas do you have for the future?
My favorite one was a Sorcerer Warlock.
Why?
I don't know. I think it was because I was like super proud of the backstory that I wrote for it, and it was like the Changeling Sorcerer Warlock that I just had a lot of fun playing. I don't know. I love me some. I liked how the charisma, like,
there's a definite synergy.
Symbiosis. Yeah, synergy. Thank you. The really good synergy. Lots of fun. There's great warlock subclasses that you get straight at level 1, so you don't have to dig too deep into it. And yeah, I just like both of those things.
Wow, Kyle, you're so much more well versed in this than I am. I'm such a purist. I never play multi-class characters. I like a specialist, right? But I suppose I have once technically. I had a champion fight at Titus who had 1 level in Warlock, which was
forced on you for plot reasons. Yeah,
forced on me for plot reasons that I probably knew I would just go along with. Going, all right, let's do it. But I enjoyed it. I got to cast Hex, and I got to add that on top of all of my attacks and all of my other extra cool stuff I was getting from my fighter character, and it just got a little bit of variety in there. So I don't have advice on how to make the best one. One of my favorites was, I'm scared to go into it because then I'll like it, and I don't want to be. I want to remain a purist. That's not open-minded at all. I know, but
no, I'm afraid.
Don't do that in life,
I don't know, man. Like in life, that's how you're supposed to do it. If you just go kind of general, then I mean you're okay and you'll never be out of work. But if you're a specialist, you will make the big bucks because that's how the corporate world works these days, is everyone
Right.
needs to be real good at one thing.
Yeah, you better hope that thing stays around as well.
I think that the most fun I ever had was playing my Gloom Stalker Assassin combo because it was all about shadows and what can I get off, what attack can I do in the very first round of combat. Afterwards, I'm okay, I'm average, but that first round, I was killing boss monsters in one hit, right? And if you,
Wow.
I threw, I think, alert on top of it as well, the feat alert. So I was never surprised, and I really committed to this the idea of once in every encounter I'm going to get off a massive attack that's going to kill somebody in one hit, and it's going to be badass, and I'm going to stick to the shadows. So Gloomstalker Ranger plus the Assassin Rogue had some really phenomenal synergy on it, to the point where I was clearly leagues beyond everybody else at the table. They were also a bunch of new players, and so they were not able to keep up at the best of times. But it was so effective that at one point I realized I was hogging all of the kills. And so I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to operate entirely off of what I'm carrying on me. And I will only attack with a stick or alchemist fire, and I've started to get creative, lay traps and shit like that just to mix it up. But that was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, that actually
Nice.
sounds like a nightmare to DM for.
Yeah, especially because my guy thrives at night, right? Most of I played a halfling as well. In retrospect, if I had played an elf that needed a trance, that would have been even better, right? So because I just would have taken watches and hung out all night and been impossible to sneak up on.
Yeah.
Tarzan of the Desert asks, if you lived in a dystopian future like Demolition Man and only one restaurant survived, what would you want it to be?
Like chain restaurant or any restaurant?
I think he means chain restaurant.
Should we go? Okay, we'll go with chain restaurant.
Yeah, Kyle, you rolled first. What do you think?
Oh man, it's a tough one.
How
Well,
long?
you know what? You know what I'm gonna go with Dave and Buster's because I like the idea of still having an arcade.
That's all right.
Okay, all right, okay. I mean, I'll probably do Burger King. I think I can go on BK for a while. Sure.
It was an ongoing joke. I don't think anybody knows this, Terry. It was an ongoing joke between me, you, and Dan for the longest time that Wednesdays were your cheat days because you could stop at Burger King on the way to Dan's house. It was the closest
100%.
restaurant.
Well, also that, and nobody knew I was going there either, apart from you guys. It was the best.
And you would walk in with your breath smelling like Whoppers, drinking a Coke or whatever, and we'd be like,
Yeah.
"Hey Terry, how's it going?" Like, you're 3 minutes late. Yeah, the drive-through was a little slow today.
Traffic, yeah. Traffic, man.
Yeah, so if you go back and listen to the first 60 or so episodes, assume that Dan and I are suffering through onion breath across the day.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. It was never that bad, but like it was pretty like consistent, like clockwork. It was Burger King.
Do you know what this is what I like about the Burger King near us as well, where we live in Vancouver. It's a shithole, to be honest. They've never changed that place since 1993. It's the same, man. I swear it's the same everything in there. But that's why I like it.
The only thing that has changed in that place was, well, I was in high school because I went to the high school that's like 3 blocks away. And so at
Right.
lunch, we would get a lunch block, but also a free period. But the free period rotated throughout the week. Like sometimes it was in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. If it lined up around lunch, you would end up with like an hour and a half off. Everyone would go down to Burger King or McDonald's and have lunch there. To the point where one time that we went down to Burger King, they ran out of stock because the high schoolers kept coming in, and then they ordered a bunch more. But when they did it, there's something that went wrong with the order. Suddenly a bunch of roaches were there, so it shut right down for. They just could not figure it out for about 2 years, and finally it stabilized again, and it's good. But well, it's not good. It's exactly what it was in 1997. Like, let's be honest. But
2 years to deal with a roach problem is bad.
oh, they had all
That is-
sorts of. I think the roach problem got the health inspector in, and the health inspector cleaned the shit out of that place. Like,
Yeah,
it was
it's
rough.
probably
I-
not great.
Clearly, they cleaned the inside only because the outside, it's the ghetto.
I love it. It's such a shithole.
I'm not kidding though. Like, I still stop there once a month.
Oh, I love it.
Well, what can I say? Should I pick an unpopular decision to go like Subway just to force everybody to stop eating burgers?
No. Yeah, I used to work this guy for a little bit. There was he was something to do with Quiznos franchises, worked for their corporate office or something, and he hated Subway. Like he had a legit like turf war with Subway, this guy, and he was like, Quiznos is a far superior product. That's what he kept saying. It's a far superior product. It's a far superior product. So that's a battlefield out there, man, in the sandwich game. So this is a hot take, really.
Well, that Subway is the most prolific restaurant in the world. There are more Subways than any other chain of restaurant anywhere in the world.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, there's only ever 2 people working in a Subway, so I think that's what makes it so attractive.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, there's no drive-through on it, right? So you can stick it in a strip mall, but you stop and think, how many are within like a 10-minute drive of you right now? You probably name 3, because every single shopping center has a Subway in it, right?
Hey, 2010, I went to a Subway in Kandahar. Smells the same, man. Smells the same everywhere you go. Like exactly the same. Crazy.
At least they're consistent.
Yeah.
They have to be. Like I've worked in restaurants for a long enough time to know that that is the whole thing about chains, right? Even McDonald's, the Starbucks is a big one where they're like, every store has to have the exact same food. If you go to a store in buttfuck nowhere, Arizona, you better have the same stuff, or it better taste exactly the same as a store in Canada.
I got to say, we have in Canada just for the longest time had the Tim Hortons versus Starbucks conversation, right? I think everybody's heard that argument in a pub at least once. And I have always been staunchly on the side of Tim Hortons until recently. However, that's one thing that I will always give Starbucks is when I go in and order a whatever Frappuccino, I know what I'm getting. I walk into any place like Dunkin' Donuts or Bean Around the World or Tim Hortons or any of the like cafe style, they brew it in the pot right there in front of you. Man, half the time you're getting something burned, right? It's been sitting there too long on the burner, or it's, too hot or too cold, or you're not getting the right amount of cream or sugar or whatever that you order in it. So I'll give that to Starbucks. Consistency. McDonald's too. You know what a cheeseburger tastes like.
Yeah, for real. For coffee, I'm A&W coffee, man. A&W coffee is my favorite.
Are they still doing Van Hoots? They did that for the longest time, and it was always burned.
I don't know what they're doing. I like it.
Harry, I don't believe you have taste buds.
When was the last time you went through an A&W coffee, Kyle? I swore them off in like 2002.
I don't know. I know I've had one sometime in the last 6 months, and it was garbage.
I think again, it's one of these situations of that coffee. If you go to grab a coffee at 1 PM from A&W, it has been sitting on the burner for the last 3 hours. But if you manage to get through at 6:30 a.m., you're getting a fresh pot of coffee every 10 minutes, right? Like,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't drink any of that shit coffee. I have very high standards. If I'm gonna go get a coffee, I want a double long shot espresso. That is my drink.
Yeah, okay.
All day.
I'm a dark roast. What are you, Terry? Just regular coffee?
Oh yeah, 100%. I'll start off medium roast, then I'll go to dark roast because it's less caffeine. I can't handle it that much anymore.
I moved to dark roast when I was smoking, and I couldn't taste regular coffee anymore. I was smoking so much, so I wanted something that would have a more potent taste. So I went to dark roast and then never looked back. So, speaking of drinks, actually, let's roll initiative again to mix it up so Kyle's not in the spot for the whole episode.
I got a 16.
I also got a 16.
Well, roll off, guys.
Roll off, Kyle. You go first again, probably. Now we got 7.
No, I got a 10.
Well, now
all right, so Kyle, Terry, and me. Okay. Kyle, what are your top? I don't think we're going to be able to list all of this. What are your top 5 beers of all time? This is from Tarzan of the Desert. Alternatively, because people are instinctually hardwired to remember bad experiences, what are your bottom 5 beers?
Oh, yeah, I don't know if I can do all 5. So top beer I think I ever had was I used to work at a brew pub, and they made their own nitro stout, and it was just like the silkiest. It was like a little bit chocolatey. It was amazing. It was, if Guinness was 10 times better, that's what the stout was like. It was so good. And then also you'd mix in a shot of Van Gogh espresso vodka, and it was mind-blowing. Second one, I really like Fat Tug. I like a strong IPA.
Yeah, you always got Fat Tug when we play Call of Cthulhu. You use Fat Tug bottles every time. Every time I see it, I think about you now, actually.
That's really sweet. Thanks, Terry.
I didn't mean it like that. Don't make it weird. I'm just saying I associate you with that particular beer.
Too late. I already associated it. It was a core memory for me now.
I always associate Dan with a Fat Tug. Anyway. Let's just do top two and bottom two then.
Okay, bottom two, Molson Canadian. It can get fucked. It is the shittiest beer ever.
Yeah.
And then Kokanee probably. Oh, Budweiser. Over
But
Kokanee.
yeah.
Budweiser, man. Okay, all right. Top one for me. Yeah, my top one, 2015, when I drove from Saskatchewan to Vancouver, I stopped in Banff, and Stanley Park Brewing had a winter ale that just tasted like dark beer, chocolate, all that sort of stuff. But it was beautiful. And then it was gone the next year after that, and I've never seen it since. And it's my favorite beer I've ever drunk ever.
You and I went on that same, probably 2016. You and I probably went on the same pilgrimage trying to find that beer again. I've never met anybody else that remembers that beer, but that stuck out to me. That's crazy.
So you say Granville Island Winter Ale?
No, Stanley Park.
That one is good. Granville Island Winter Ale, maybe my number two beer actually, but the Stanley Park one was exceptional, and it was a really romantic time in my life. I'm moving to Vancouver. I'm in Banff in winter. It was beautiful and it was perfect. I've never found it since. Second, what do I like? What do I like? I quite like Sapporo, actually. I like rice beer. I like Sapporo. I want to go the other way. I want to go away from craft beer to like a regular beer.
Fair enough. Do you have worst beers?
Ones that I don't like. Nothing that I can think of that I hate. I don't typically like German beer. I lived in Germany for a little bit and I wasn't into that beer, the Weiss beer. I don't like it.
Not a fan of Grolsch?
Not really, no.
I gotta say, for my favorite beers, I gotta drink a stout. I need a loaf of bread in a cup. That's my go-to. I think it's pretty standard. Most people know at this point that I'm only content with a Guinness in my hand. But if you can find me a chocolate stout, I will pick that up as a treat just about any time.
Yeah.
On the opposite side of things, because that's like my winter, fall, spring beer. But on a hot day, you don't want to drink a stout. You want something smoother and clearer. And I don't know what it is, but like I will end up going with a Corona or a Moosehead, depending on the mood. Like if I'm out sweating, if I'm camping and I want to just day drink my life away.
Yeah.
Right. I will just crush cans of Moosehead. But my dad used to have Corona in the fridge, so that was something that just like in my 20s would reach for a beer sometimes and do that. So
Corona. The two good ones, Corona and Moosehead, I like them both.
Moosehead is Canadian, and it actually was brewed not far from where my parents grew up, so they were very loyal to it. And I spent my very first beer was a Moosehead when I was 14. I was at my grandmother's funeral, and my uncle came out to me and like he got me away from my mom, and he's like, "Hey, we're all drinking inside. Here, have a beer." I'm like, "I'm too young for this." He said, "Drink the beer." So I did, and it was a Moosehead, and it was disgusting, and I hated it. And I thought, this tastes like a recycling plant smells like. But it is now one of my favorites. So the worst beers of my life, Budweiser. Budweiser's just shit.
Yeah.
Molson Canadian, when they got bought out, turned to shit too. Like I support that. There are a bunch of beers. If it's an IPA, I will not drink it. I don't care if it's free. I don't care if somebody brings it to me and gives it to me for my birthday. I will not drink an IPA. I have hopped enough hops in my life.
I think we've done it in Vancouver. We've IPA'd ourselves to death, and I don't mind them every now and again, but I don't need it like I used to.
There are multiple places in the lower mainland here around Vancouver. There are multiple sections of the city where you can do an IPA pub crawl without within 2 blocks. Like we've just done the microbrewery for the IPAs to death. So I don't know. I'm just done with them.
I feel like there's a lot of sours now, which don't jive with.
You know what? I really like some sours, but they've got to earn it. They can't just be, we're doing a lavender sour because that's what we're doing today. Or this week we've got a plum sour. No. To scale it back some, do it and do it right. And do it once.
Yeah, the plan can't just be to be more sour than the other guy. That's not good.
Yeah. Another one from Tarzan of the Desert. Tarzan of the Desert, by the way, one of my favorite names of the people that write in. He's got a number of questions here. But one of my favorite names, because I just picture Tarzan wishing for a tree and walking in his loincloth through the desert, getting sunburned. It's just always very funny to me. Kyle, physically or emotionally, what is the worst pain that you are comfortable sharing in your life?
Oh man, I think emotional would probably be when my dog died when I was 18, and he was like my best friend growing up, real close. Oh, that just broke me. Still like almost cry every time I think about them. But physical pain is the worst physical pain. Oh, I fell off a swing set when I was a kid and I bruised my spinal cord.
Oh,
That was unpleasant.
I don't fuck with spinal cords. That's no good. Terry, what about you?
Yeah, I just got hit. Physical pain. Fortunately, I've been very fortunate that nothing stands out to me. Touch wood. I've never knowingly broken a bone yet. Might have technically broke my toes, so then at one point just walked it off. But I have no major things yet. But hopefully this guy's just jinxed me now. Tarzan of the desert, and that's it. I've told the universe, and they bumped me to the top of the list. Emotional pain. You're not getting my probably top 3 out of me.
No, we don't need to end up in therapy.
Yeah, nobody needs that. But a significant one, something that Adam shares with me actually is you handled a long distance relationship for a long time. I think I did it for about half as long as you did, but it's so difficult when you're so dedicated to the person, and it's like you're the happiest you've ever been when you see them, and you're the saddest you've ever been when you're apart again. It's the worst. So I know a lot of people deal with that in the world, but that's been a difficult one in my life.
Yeah, you're not wrong. There's a reason that the podcast always has a giant upswing in activity, like behind the scenes, right before I see Mieka, and then there's just like 6 weeks of nothing as I'm laying face down on the carpet afterwards. Right. So
yeah.
For me, the worst physical pain that I ever had was I passed 7 kidney stones in 2 days.
Oh,
yeah. That just kept on giving. And like it starts to hurt in your lower back and they just keep coming and you can feel them move through you. It's no good.
Yes.
It's no good. I was in my mid-30s and I was reduced to whimpering tears on the bathroom floor repeatedly for 2 days. I thought that I sweated through my clothes. It was so bad. But the worst emotional pain was Mieka had to cancel her trip due to COVID. She was coming out to see me for a month or for 2 months. It was the longest time that we were going to spend together. And up until that point, and she had to cancel that trip. And then 2 days later, my dad died. And then the day, like 12 hours after that, I lost my job and we went into lockdown and I didn't see anybody. I live alone. I sat in my basement with that for months. That was the darkest anything ever got. And as a matter of fact, I credit getting through the other side of that. 90% of that is Mieka, and the other 10% is the podcast, because we kept it running and we did a lot of the only person I saw was Dan, because we were doing all of the mob mentality episodes. You guys, Kyle, is that when you joined the podcast?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and we were consistently editing and talking to people and getting clips, and it gave me something to focus on, because otherwise it was just there. I remember saying, I haven't turned the lights on in 4.5 days in my house. Like, it was rough. It was bad. And then Dan would call me and be like, we're going for a coffee because I need to ask you something about the podcast. So we go for coffee. And it was just his excuse to get me out of the house, because Mieka called him and said, Adam's not doing good. Get him out of the house. So that was a rough period for me.
Good man, Dan.
You're a goddamn rock, man. I don't know how you do it. People don't realize, like, you're so patient with everyone. And I remember that time, because I was one of the millions of people that I was losing my mind. And you were so patient. And I think you handled so much of that time that for a lot of us, we didn't realize until it had gone past that time. And then we were like, holy shit, we knew some parts, but man, you're crazy.
But I thank you. It doesn't feel like that sometimes. You say rock, I say sponge. But let's move on to the other thing before I end up needing a therapy session. Here we go. This will be a group effort. I think, well, we won't go in order for this. We'll just start screaming this out. Tarzan of the Desert says, take the gang from Scooby-Doo and assign them all a race, class, and background from 5th edition.
These things are getting harder, these questions. Okay. Okay. Race, class, and background. See, it's easy to ask that. That's a lot. This is now like 15 things I got to come up with.
Yeah, I need a book in front of me to like think about it.
I mean, clearly Shaggy is a furbolg druid with a urchin background, right? Like, we're just getting that vibe off of him.
Can we just call him
Urchin
Ranger, and then just tie Scooby-Doo in there with it? Can we just tie those two together?
Yeah, we could do that. I would have, yeah. Scooby-Doo himself, I would have said, is a halfling. If we're gonna take him off a dog and give him an actual like race, I said halfling just because he's lucky as fuck all of the time.
Okay. What's Scrappy do? Tavern brawler, I guess.
Well, he's a gnome.
Gnome Tap and Brawler.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember who they all are. I am not one of these people that's up to date on my Scooby-Doo lore because I know that there's a bunch of that shit that's come out recently. But
Yeah. Who?
Oh man, who? Fred?
Fred,
I'm gonna say Fred is Totem Warrior Barbarian.
Okay.
you think so? I was gonna say Paladin for him.
Yeah, but I don't know. He's kind of dumb.
He is kind of dumb.
So he's just like, I'll protect you. What would I have him as?
I don't know, man. This is hard. I'd have to take a look at all the subclasses and shit that are out there. But
yeah,
Velma's
like
clearly a wizard.
Wizard. Yeah.
Velma?
Yeah. Well,
Inquisitive Rogue.
Yeah, there you go. I like that better.
Okay. She's heavy. I feel like she's heavier in intelligence more than dexterity, though, right?
Yeah, but rogues can be built with intelligence as their major stat. Dan did that with Loki. Intelligence was his number one stat. He was an inquisitive rogue, right? And he gave off Velma vibes every once in a while. We have to get to the bottom of this. Let's use our logic on the thing and think it out. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The villain of every episode is a changeling because they always have a different face on.
Easy.
Who am I missing?
Except for the movies where it is actually ghosts.
Daphne.
I'm going to be honest. I don't remember Daphne having a role in any of the Scooby-Doo.
Right.
Like the rest of them all had like a whole bunch of agencies.
It's not bad to say.
Purely sidekick or like love interest in most of the things that I'm thinking of, right? So like bartender, NPC. She's the party sidekick.
Some kind of cleric, maybe?
Might have had dreams.
Yeah, cleric's not a bad answer. Yeah, I can live with cleric. I honestly I don't even know where to start with this. I think that I would have a lot of fun casting things into races and classes and stuff. But man, Scooby-Doo is a hard one.
Yeah.
All right. Tarzan of the Desert also asks, what's your favorite homebrew thing that you've added as a DM or used as a player in your game? Examples being homebrew feat, magic items, spell, rule, something like that. What's the thing that you're the most proud of adding to your game?
I always need more time.
Well, you guys...
okay. I didn't come up with it myself, but it was like a pair of brass knuckles that I saw, and they were called Thoughts and Prayers, and they did radiant and psychic damage.
That's awesome.
Thoughts and Prayers. I was gonna be like, what? Did nothing happen afterwards? I like it. Thoughts and Prayers. God, I don't know. I can't think of I don't really come up with homebrew items and stuff. I'm very heavily invested in my NPCs. Like I put a lot of effort in my NPCs, and then I'll just pull magic items from the known D&D universe. I honestly don't really homebrew a lot.
Do you have a homebrew rule that you rely on?
Homebrew rule I rely on. Yeah, I go against the drowning rules. I think actually I stole this from you. I do the rounds. You know, 1 plus your con modifier, whatever it is, for rounds instead of minutes when you're in combat, to kind of unlock that part of the game.
That one's good. Potions is a bonus action.
I suppose that's technically homebrew. I do that as well. Yeah.
I don't let you draw it as a bonus action, but I'll let you drink it if it's already in your hand.
Okay, but can't you draw things as part of your move action?
As long as it's on your belt or in your pocket. If it's in your backpack, I'm not letting you dig through your backpack in the middle of battle as part of your movement.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
So I'm pretty particular about the shit you can get away with in the span of 6 seconds, because I've got some greedy players that want to do this and this and this and this and this and just hog the spotlight just because they're excited.
Yeah.
But there's been the conversation, I'm going to say about once a month, I go, really? You think you can do all of that in 6 seconds? And it stops them cold. And they go, oh, all right, well, I will save the potion for next round. Yeah, all right, you do that. So,
yeah.
My homebrew rule that I am unapologetic about is you re-roll 1s and 2s on anything relating to hit dice. So when you're rolling a character, when you're leveling, or when you are during a short rest, or someone is healing a certain number of hit dice, because it's your resource, then you get to re-roll 1s and 2s. Potions and spells are straight up. That's all it is. But my potions, okay, here's the other thing I'm really happy about. Your potions, a minor healing potion is 1 of your hit dice. Medium one is 3 of your hit dice. An extreme one is 5 of your hit dice. And so I hand out different levels of them so that it's an equal amount, and we're not rewarding squishy wizards and punishing barbarians for just having it be a D8 or a D6, right?
Yeah. Well,
Right, that's
it's
fair.
2d4 plus 2, I think, is like a
Yeah.
regular one.
Yeah, but I mean that's nothing for a barbarian, right?
Yeah, true.
So, and
Yeah.
who's the one that needs them? The guy in the front. So let him be D12s, and then I hand them out, accordingly based on how beat up I think my guys are going to be. So, actually, I think my favorite homebrew item, Terry, was probably the knob goblin, just because it was consistently. It wasn't the fact that it was a knob; it was the fact that it would come screaming back into existence every morning at dawn and would drive your in-game wife absolutely fucking crazy. And
Pregnant wife.
then,
Pregnant wife.
yeah, she was having none of it. And then and he would always die by the end of the night, and he'd beg for death, so that there was just a pile of bodies of this dead goblin, the same goblin over and over and over again, that would get reborn from nothingness within, what was it, 10 feet of your character every day at dawn.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, and would come screaming into the world as well. At dawn.
No one was doing a stealth mission at dawn, let me tell you that. It was
But if I remember rightly, I wasn't supposed to have that item. I think Jamie had it, and then the last use, which we didn't know was the last use before it was going to turn into this goblin. For whatever reason, I had it. I insisted on using it or something. No, this will work, something. And then I did it, and then that's why the goblin came to me. It wasn't supposed to be me.
No, it was not. And then to great effect, it ended up being you, and it was very funny. King of Rot says, there's been talk on the podcast before about playing out large battles and wars, mostly from Adam. As someone who's about to throw a whole dang war into my campaign, do you have any tips that are not the minigame method? Minigame method being like Matt Colville, like you end up like having cards, and different cards equal different squadrons, and they have different powers, and you're essentially playing Pokemon there for a little bit. Like there are all sorts of other, like, oh, we'll stop and play a board game, or let's play chess or whatever to simulate the battle. Do you have any tips about actually running a battle?
Yeah, so this is the way sorry, Kyle, you go ahead. You roll.
No, you got an answer ready. I had a question.
So this is the way I do it. The way I'm running the war in my campaign is I treat the battles as an event. The players have agency, but they can only affect what they can affect around them within this overarching storyline that we have. So the event is happening either way. I also know who's going to win either way, most likely, but there will be, I will know who the victor is necessarily, and they can affect things within it. So they can only, and I use it as like a hex crawl, essentially. So I know the battle's happening across this area, and they can move between hexes if they want to, where they'll have encounters every time they move between a different hex in the battle. And then after so many rounds, it will be over, but I will already know which side was going to win.
So do the players actually have an effect, or is it like a foregone conclusion?
Sorry, I wasn't clear on this part. Their objective in their game is not, hey, the 5 of you go and win that battle. It'll be like, during the battle, kill that dragon.
Yeah, okay.
That may affect something within the event, but I don't have it that they're rolling for the 10,000 troops on either side.
Yeah, fair enough. Adam, you and I just recently talked about this on another episode. But I mean, for me, I don't think 5e is the greatest system for giant battles, set pieces. So I like giving them multiple objectives that they can complete. I would have it like score it kind of in terms of what is the most important to the battle that's going on. Like obviously they'll have each objective will have consequences to it, whether they do it or they don't. And just kind of have points bar. So I'd be like, if you get, I'm just making up these numbers, but let's say you get 20 points, you get the best outcome in terms of the war. If you get between 10 and 20, then, it is, you still win, but the side you were fighting for still takes some amazing losses. If you're like 0 to 10, then it's a pirate victory, right? You may have won, but you lost a larger battle. A lot of people died, maybe an important NPC lost their life, kind of thing like that.
I agree. And we are recording this now. By the time it comes out, it'll be like the campaign builder will be episode 48 or 49, somewhere around there. We are going to actually cover mass combat for the campaign builder, episode 52, 53, 54. We're going to spend 3 episodes talking about mass combat and dynamic encounters to have within it. But just as a quick kind of glimpse at that idea, I've always been a big proponent of get your guys into the battle, but have the battle be chaotic at initiative counts. If you want it to be more chaotic, then you run it like lair actions, and the lair actions should be when the different kinds of things. I can't have 7 or 8 different squadrons of militia and keep track of all of the cavalries that are involved. And also we have spellcasters, giants, dragons, flying creatures, teleporters. Like, there's too much in a D&D battle. It's chaotic. But what I can do is narrate shit happening at initiative count 20, 12, and 3 or something, right? So that as my players are involved, the chaos going on around them would be everybody roll on initiative count 13. It's going to alternate back and forth between the hag on the battlefield and the dragon on the battlefield. So if it is the dragon on the battlefield, then every other round of combat, everyone make a dex save to avoid taking the breath weapon, right? As it sweeps through the region, right? And so it will be shit like that all the time. So you're doing your version of it, of like whatever your complicated objective is out there on the battlefield. Like, yes, go out and take out that warlord, or go blow up that bridge to stop their reinforcements, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Go rescue this squad that got cut off. But while you are there dealing with it, chaos is going off all of the time. And I've got my notes written on the side, but because of the fact that they can't see the notes and it seems to be happening at random throughout the combat, it's going to feel a lot more chaotic and a lot scarier, and like a war that you can't control. My only comment on that is none of those layer action level things should be deadly. They should do damage, or more likely they should have condition effects. So, for example, if you get hit with the white dragon breath in the middle of a war, well, the white dragon breath has a range of, let's say, 120 feet, depending on how big the dragon is. He's 150 feet away. So what you're going to do is have your movement reduced by 10 feet around for 1d4 rounds as a result of getting hit by the blast. That's not going to kill you. That is going to affect your objective. And so there's that kind of shit happening all the time. You guys know that you have to hold this position for the next 5 rounds. But if the enemy cavalry comes through, they may wipe out some of your reinforcements. So it's up to you guys to do something to interrupt the person blowing the horn summoning the cavalry. You know, like it's that kind of shit all of the time. And it should be very clear, almost to the point of me being meta, saying this is your clear objective. This is everything you see around you, and I'll give regular descriptions, but you guys stick together as a group. This is the shit that's popping off around you, and don't be distracted by that, right? Just because there's a troll going absolutely berserk on the other hill over there and wiping out a bunch of your allies, you have a mission. If you go fight that troll, your mission will not get accomplished. So
yeah.
So stay on task. And so it's just almost a more involved skill challenge where they have control of being in initiative and being in combat, and they've got the agency over what spells they want to cast and shit like that. My other comment is speed up the rests. A long rest takes an hour, a short rest takes 5 minutes. That's going to keep your battle running. That'll keep it deadly and scary, and you can run through a full battle in a long session, and they will always have resources to play with. You just let them know that you guys are hopped up on the special berry juice that the Elven Prince gave you, which allows you to regenerate your shit faster. So
right, yeah,
because it sucks to be like, hey, we're on night 2 of the battle, we haven't slept yet, nobody has spells. Pretty sure that's what happened to the Night King's army in the Game of Thrones at Winterfell. They just ran out of shit to do and they all just died. King of Rot says, if there are nations at war in your games, what creatures, beings, and beasts would you like to see join them? I'm looking for the cool factor. We all know giants, dragons, and beholders are awesome. What else could match them in vibes alone?
I mean, I think this is entirely going to depend on who these two factions are, right? Like if you have a Fae, one side is a Fae and the other side is aberrations, right? That's going to hugely affect who you're going to stick with it. I mean, if we're just going, let's just say we have normal participants, you know, I love gnolls.
Yeah.
They're weird, they're vicious, they're crazy, you know?
And they're an existential threat too, because the more they kill you, the more they feast, the more of them there are, right?
Yeah.
If you're not careful, you are going to have a real null problem really quickly.
I have my war right now. I have Kyle, are we done? Sorry. I took
No, go for it. Yeah.
I have Gith fighting alongside devils right now. In my, I know I have a dragon campaign, but it's with backstories and things, and pulling certain other creatures in, and different factions getting involved. Now I have Gith fighting alongside devils, fighting alongside dragons. So they're cool. Very different types of stuff going on.
Yeah, I think that honestly, if you don't have devils, demons, or celestials somehow involved, you're not doing a war right, because that's where these guys are going to show up. It's cool that you added the Gith. I'm excited. We've got a Gith episode coming up in a little while, in a few weeks. So
one of my player characters is half Gith, and his grandfather is one of the big bads, and he's full Gith. So that's where that came from. So as the Dragon War kicked off, one of the big bads, who's an ally of the dragon side, and so brought his Gith to aid them.
Now, when you say Gith, do you mean that he's a Gith? He's half Gith Yankee, or is he half?
He's Gith Yankee. Sorry, I just shortened it to say Gith because I say it all the time.
He's not half Gith Confederate.
No, Gith Yankee. I don't know what that was that you said there, so I breezed past it.
I think it's funny. Anyway,
he's making a Civil War joke.
Yeah, it's not a Gith Yankee; it's a Gith Confederate. Anyway, moving on. There's always room for a hag, and if you've got sides that are at war, then your Yugoloths should be involved somewhere, because they are literally fiendish, which means they are not afraid to die, because they will just go back to their plane of existence, right? So they are literal fiendish mercenaries. That's what they're there for. So Yugoloths are a great answer. Hags are always good. Having a Kraken in the background is never a bad thing. I'm just trying to think, what are the big epic pieces? I think it'd be really cool to have opposing battalions of angels, or two angels maybe that are fighting against each other due to a interpretation of a prophecy or something. Right? Okay. So
the real heaven and hell.
Sorry?
The real heaven and hell kind of thing.
No, not even. It's just it would be like there are two angels. They're not even the generals. It's like there are two armies going to war, but they have shown up, and the angel says, well, these guys are more just because these people are starving. They need the resources, so it's more just to side with them and save them. But the other side says, yes, but they shouldn't be here on the land. That's against the law. We uphold the law, right? And so they're both right. They're just going to have to fight it out. And now you have different kinds of angels to fight against.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
King of Rot asks, if you're playing a campaign arc with one shot centered around serial killers, and you decide to reveal the killers through their crime scenes, like in the movie Seven, what do you fill the in-between with, so that your players don't feel like they're being dragged along from one murder description to another? So I guess the question is, how do you make an investigation interesting instead of just going from murder to murder to murder?
I mean, you could do investigations, or not, sorry, that's interviews with victims' families, try to piece together who their enemies might have been, what kind of motive this person might have had, what connects each of your victims. I like the idea of finding symbols too, where it's not something right? Like, so in the campaign that I just started, I'm going to have a symbol, these people that wear a symbol, and it's of a burning book, but I'm not going to tell them what it's about. It's supposed to be like a secret society kind of thing.
It's really good to link this to conspiracies, right?
Yeah.
So the challenge that we have with the D&D rule set is, or the D&D game as a whole for this type of thing, is the threat of death. You don't feel as vulnerable, even at lower levels. There's magic in the world, and there's you have all kinds of abilities, even when you're low level. So a mystery is hard to make tense in the D&D world, I find. You're probably better using something like the Call of Cthulhu backdrop, just removing all the Cthulhu stuff and doing your mystery in there, where the characters are a lot more vulnerable. Even the fact that it's dark is terrifying. You're a lot squishier, and your resources are also limited as well, because you're trying to look through libraries and newspapers and questioning people that are not easy to get to and that kind of thing. So I would suggest switching rule set or playing at very low level and trying to remove all of the magic and easy outs.
That's one thing that you could do to make it really interesting, is have it. This area has been permanently turned into a anti-magic field.
Yeah,
it covers this section of town, or this large manor where the murder happened, or even the entire city, right? Like anti-magic field. So you are left with just your swords and your magnifying glasses and your hit points, right? Another thing to add would be the killer is able to kill using a coup de grace. It's very simple. If they keep finding that there's a mark on the person and it kills them outright, even though they're one of the toughest people out there, or it shouldn't be able to get past Dragonborn scales or whatever it is, and it does anyway. There's a single maneuver that happens. And I would telegraph that. I've got a couple of instant kill items in my campaign. One of them is a garrote. If you can grapple with it, that player dies on the next turn. If they can't, they have 1 round to get out of it, and then they're done. So,
I love it.
I have also done this in settings where you are cut off and there are only a certain number of NPCs and people keep dying. One of the ones that we did was there was a murderer that was in a tent city outside of a walled city, and the city that was walled was not letting anybody in, but there was a blizzard outside and there were 300 refugees, and people kept turning up dead in the outside of their tents in the blizzard. Someone was luring them out and murdering them, and there's a huge we need to find this person because our numbers are dwindling, because they were killing 3 or 4 people a night. So we did that, and because of the fact that you couldn't go outside with making survival checks once a minute, it made it scarier. You were trapped. You didn't know which tent was going to be struck next. And you'd get there and say, who was here? And they would list, because they were by tents, I mean pavilions. They'd list 30 people. So you're writing lists and trying to cross-reference and figure out. One of the things that I love doing is if I'm going to do a mystery of some sort, I will put you in a culture you are not familiar with. It is considered impolite in this high society to speak with dead or to use necromancy spells of any kind. This person died of poison. We could not heal them because it's impolite. Somebody knew that and tailored this murder to be by poison.
Yeah. I would also fix that by just going, their soul is stolen. They took it when they were murdered. There is nothing you can connect or you can commune with, or you can't use Revivify either.
And there's a lot of stuff out there that lets you do that. There's a Night Hag's Bag of Souls, and there's soul coins for the Infernal Machines. There's shit out there that will just steal coins. Or steal souls. So, that's absolutely a thing to do. Also, you'd kind of need a whole body to do that. So if a Mind Flayer eats your brain, your body's not whole. You can't get resurrected.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, here's one. Iron Mag 44 asks, specifically me for some reason, Adam, what's your top 3 shows/movies you would want to do a spoof campaign about, excluding The Mummy, because we just talked about The Mummy in a Mailbag episode at length. So guys, let's just pick one each, a show or a movie that you would turn into a campaign.
Trying not to go too on the nose here.
Let's re-roll initiative. It's been a while since we've done this. 4.
Oh, 11.
Kyle, what'd you get?
A 7.
Okay.
Terry, you're first.
Because of my love of Call of Cthulhu and D&D, I don't know, what do I want to do? I mean, you know what? I'll do an obvious one, actually. I should do Eberron and do Carnival Row or something. That gives me that type of ruggedness that I like from Call of Cthulhu, and it also gives me the fantasy from D&D. So I'll probably do that. Yeah.
Kyle, what do you got?
You go first. I'm still thinking.
I have gone on record as saying that I think Deep Space Nine would be an absolutely amazing campaign to run, because you'd have just kind of weird little adventures for 2 seasons, then a small war for a season, and then a big war for 4 seasons. Then shit just keeps getting weirder and weirder, and you have shapeshifters that are infiltrating, as well as you've got to go off of this station to go to other locations to solve little mysteries or go to the battle, the front of the war. And at one point they lose control of their own station and they've got to run away and then come back and infiltrate and get the station back. There's a lot of shit going on in Deep Space Nine. So I've said that before. I also think the Star Trek Voyager would be phenomenal. You start off, you are teleported to the other side of the world. Get home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you spend, the first third of it dicking about with little adventures of meeting people, making allies, learning things about different cultures. And you kind of gotta get a world tour kind of feel. And then they had the Borg show up, and you would have this existential threat. Now you just fight Mind Flayers or something for a third. And then at the end, what was the thing at the end? They had, what was it, Species? Terry, you liked Voyager, right? It was Species.
I can't remember.
847, something like that. which were just like biological nightmares. So I would bring in aberrations like crazy after that, right? Like, I don't think it's hard to sit down and grab some of these pre-streaming before Netflix, those pre-streaming shows like Star Trek or Buffy or, you know, the fantastic ones. Take Xena, Warrior Princess, right? Like, you could take these, and for the most part, they started off really episodic, and then as they go, they become more and more serialized, and you have constant bad guys and regular threats. And it's been long enough that these 20 or 30-year-old shows will have slipped to the background in people's minds, and it might take them a long time to figure it out if you're creative enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also feel like those shows have 26 episodes a season. So there's just so much shit you can pick from.
Yeah, instead of these 6-episode seasons we're stuck with now on shit, right? Like,
yeah, which I mean, okay, so honestly, I am drawing a blank, so I'm just going to take the most recent thing that I have been watching, which is Severance.
is that good?
Yeah, it's super fucking weird, and it has a whole bunch of like moral dilemmas that I never would have thought about with the premise. And so, yeah, basically what happens in the show is they take a job where they're not allowed to know anything about the job. So they get a microchip put in their brain, and every day they go to work, the microchip flips on. They don't know anything about their outside life. They're just in this cubicle. And then as soon as they leave, the microchip switches off, and then they don't remember anything from their workday. And I would love to do something where you have two players, or like each player has two characters that only share slight similarities, and you put them in wildly different scenarios. I don't know how it would work, but I'm sure there's something in there.
It sounds a lot like a retelling of, do you guys remember Dollhouse? The Eliza Dushku back in like
Never.
2004, 6, somewhere around there. The premise of that one, it only lasted a couple of seasons, but they did wrap it up. They knew ahead of time they were getting canceled, so they wrapped it up. But the premise is that instead of doing prison time, you could just offer your body to this corporation. And what they would do is they would take your personality away, and you would have, instead of doing 20 years in prison, you do 5 years in what they called the dollhouse, where they would wipe your mind clean and then upload new skills and personalities into you. And then you would get hired by rich people to go be a bodyguard or be a chef or be a prostitute or be an assassin. And so it was the same actors going on different kind of adventures for the first little while, until they realized that some of these dolls were starting to retain some of the memories of their previous jobs, and then it started to fuck with them. And there was a lot of moral questions about what makes a person a person. It was actually a pretty decent little show. So
wow, nice.
On to the next one, though. I could talk about old TV shows forever. On to the next one. Snowosaurus Rex asks, what's your top 3 Mummy movies excluding The Mummy? I balked at this one on the Discord because we already did a whole fucking episode about these. So I said, we already did that. Tarzan of the Desert asks, and here's the fun question, guys. Okay, then, what is your favorite Mummy movie? But it's spelt like mother. Like, what's your favorite Mummy movie? X-rated or otherwise.
Okay. Mrs. Doubtfire.
You came prepped for that one, hey, Kyle.
As soon as you said Mummy, I was like, oh, dude, right there.
You didn't go with Bambi or The Land Before Time for that?
It's can you really say that Bambi is a mommy movie, considering the mom dies within the first 10 seconds?
Oh, look, you're 45 minutes into it before the mom dies, but I mean, isn't that the driving motivation by the whole movie?
Yeah, I guess. I feel like you'd only pick that if you wanted to kill your mom, though.
I'll go a completely different direction. I'll say Bird Box. I thought Sandy B was good in that. Sandy B was Bird Box.
Yeah. You guys ever seen Mother Dearest or Mummy Dearest? That is a fucked up, loosely based on a true story about an actress in Hollywood who lost her absolute shit on her daughter as her star. The mother's star was fading. She was getting older, not getting cast in shit anymore. And it's a thriller about her terrorizing the people around her as she loses her grip on reality.
Oh, shit. That sounds pretty interesting.
Wow, okay.
It's one of those ones from like it's older. I should look it up real quick here because I just want to make sure that I'm getting my info. It's been years since I've seen this. Yeah, 1981. So it is an older film, but it stars Faye Dunaway in it. Yeah, and it's biographical psychological drama. And it is the story about Joan Crawford, who takes in 2 orphans, and at first their unconventional family seems happy, but after Joan's attempts of romantic fulfillment go sour and she's fired from her contract with MGM Studios, she becomes callous and abusive towards her daughter, and everything just goes right off the fucking rails. It is an intense ride, and it's back from the early 80s when like those thrillers didn't hold a whole lot back, and like the acting is top notch. So
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. I changed my mind. Psycho.
there you go. There's a mummy movie. If there ever
Yeah.
was one.
Sure.
All right. I don't. It's funny. Like they asked us about, what spoof campaign would you do, or like what series would you pull from, and none of us said Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or anything. Right?
Too easy.
I'm just not interested. Sorry, that
No.
came up because I was thinking of mummy issues, and that is just Game of Thrones through and through. Acid Dialogue asks, what instruments have you played in the past, and do you still play any of them?
I used to play bass guitar when I was growing up, and probably stopped in my 20s actually. Probably like 10 years ago. I haven't played it since. But I still have it. It's on the wall next to me. It's over here. So that's the only instrument I played in bands when I was growing up.
Can you play the guitar at all, or is it just the bass?
No, I actually went straight to bass because I could get going faster. Because all my friends jumped into bands, and they'd been playing instruments like drums and guitars and stuff for a while, and I hadn't. So they were like, "Oh, well, can you just play bass? Can you just learn some punky riffs like over the next few weeks?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll pull that out." So that's how that started.
Nice. Kyle?
I played the recorder when I was a child.
That's not an instrument.
The only instrument that Kyle plays is the heartstrings of lonely women.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I thought that earlier when Kyle was talking about his cooking. I was like, this guy likes to date, man. This guy knows the dating game. I'm not surprised that you can cook.
The only stringed instrument that Kyle plays is the G string.
Classic.
I always wanted to learn how to play the piano, though.
I would love to play the piano. I just don't have it in me these days to devote any more time to another thing. I think the piano is my favorite instrument. I love the electric bass, love it, but there's just something clean about a piano that I just fucking love.
Yeah.
Speaking of bass, I grew up playing all of the bass brass instruments, so baritone, euphonium, trombone to a much lesser degree, and then I even dabbled with trumpet and tuba a little bit, but I wouldn't say that I could play any of them anymore. I could pick it up and I could make noise out of it, but I then went and chain smoked 2 packs a day for the best part of a decade. I don't think I could push the wind through a fucking tuba again if I tried. So I would just pass out.
So how did you get into bass instruments then?
No, because they all use the bass clef. That's all. So
Right.
What happened was so here's the story. I wanted to join the high school band because I was in the middle school choir, but that wasn't, manly enough for me when I was like 13 and, just full of shit like every 13-year-old boy. But I still wanted to be in that group because the girl that I liked at the time was in the band, which meant that every other day she would have band class and every other day she would have English class. Whereas everybody else in the school had to have English class every day for a semester, whereas hers ran for the whole year. So I wanted to be in that class. It amounted to nothing. I never had a moment with that girl ever, but I signed up to play the last instrument sitting there. I walked in and went, I don't know what any of this is. It's all the same. And my teacher at the time said, well, there's no one playing the baritone horn. And I went, okay, do I do solos? And he laughed and said, absolutely not. This is not a solo. Fucking great. Give it to me. I will hide in the back. So,
That's such a dude thing to do. Only a dude would go and learn an instrument he has no interest in because he might get to talk to a girl.
Yep. I have to admit that for a couple of years in high school, I definitely was motivated entirely by the girl that I liked this week. What is she doing? I will be interested in this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, at least you got an eclectic range of skills.
You know what? I actually I ended up having to do stagecraft as well. Like I was involved in the theater and stuff, but I didn't want to build sets. I didn't care. But I know, I'm pretty good with paper mache and shit, and I can make like realistic body doubles out of chicken wire and shit. Because of our plays that we had to do, I joined the stagecraft because the girl that I liked was in stagecraft. I actually got a couple of weird, bizarre little things out of that. Anyway, that's
there. You go.
Yeah.
You can fake your own death now.
And have question number 18. King of Rot again says, so I started an online West Marches game group with a bunch of people who I know, but I don't want to include in my home game because there's too many players. However, some of them are pretty new to D&D, like they've played a game or two, but they don't have rule books or dice. Any tips or tricks? Terry, this is a great question for you because you introduced almost your entire table to D&D.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get them involved?
You have to you have to guide them through it. You have to make it easy. The instructions have to be simple and concise. If you have to talk to a new player like you're talking to a child, but not condescendingly. You have to say, so I have a new player coming in soon. She has no D&D experience, but she really wants to join my table. My party is like level 12 now. I was like, good luck. I'll try and help you. But it's just going to be a matter of, okay, Chloe, it's your turn. Don't worry about the time limits that the other guys have for combat. What do you want to do? Okay, I want to hit it. And then just don't be like, okay, what kind of attack can you do? I know what she has. Okay, I know you have a sword. Roll a d20. Okay, and your modifier will be this. And just be simple with it. And then because it's repetition that gets it in for new players. It's not you constantly telling them, it's them watching it over and over again and doing it over and over again. So just keep telling them the steps concisely one at a time each time.
Yeah. So is it more about how to introduce someone, or is it you repeat the question again?
So the West Marches game style is that you essentially send a blast out to a bunch of people and say, hey, this is you'll have like a chat of 20 people or a circle of friends that are like way larger than a D&D group could be. And then you say, hey, I'm doing this adventure for the next 2 to 3 sessions. Who is in first come, first serve? And so then a bunch of people sign up, you run it. And then when it's done, everybody gets a little bit of loot and you say, okay, cool. And then, I'm taking a week off. And then 2 weeks later, you say, okay, hey, back out to the group. So everybody, I'm running this kind of game, or here's the plot line. It's going to be beholder based. It's going to be mystery for 3 sessions, and it's going to be really dark and grim. Who wants to come check this out? Everybody has got a character 2 made that's ready to go, and they just grab whichever character they want to play that week. And if they make it, they show up, they get to keep playing. As I've seen it, it's usually first come, first serve, although I know a lot of players or a lot of DMs say, you can't play 2 campaigns back to back unless we need to fill slots, right? So everybody gets a turn, that kind of shit. But when you've got way too many players, when you've got people that don't have access to books or dice or anything else, but they want to try it out, how do you get them involved?
Interesting. I mean, I would try to do it as a group, right? Like I would probably try to single out the first time players, bring them all over and do like a group introduction, keep it easy, have them playing level 1 or level 3 characters. And, patience is key, right? You want to encourage people to come out of their shell a little bit, make sure that you're asking questions and just being kind and encouraging. And I think that's really all you can do. Half of it, you really have to leave up to them, right? They have to take the initiative to learn some of this stuff themselves, either buy a book or read a book or borrow a book from somebody else. I'm sure you can find these books at a fucking library and just be like, listen, these are the important things you need to know. Just read through them and then we can go over it. And I don't know, I would probably try to stagger what we're doing, right? Like maybe one day we're going to have just role playing. And then another day we're going to do just combat. And then another day we're going to do just exploration and try to ease it in. Yeah. And just, I think, yeah.
I think that's what you guys are saying is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to think about the resources here for a minute, though, for people. First of all, if you're playing online, you don't need dice. You can do it off of dice apps, right? Especially if you're going to use Roll20 and stuff. A lot of them have dice built right into the app. But even then, I'm moving their characters around on the tabletop app. Like I'm not going to let them do it. I'm not going to worry about minis so much. I will focus on, if like we're in person and we're playing at a table, I will use little tokens with their name on it, their character name, and just move it around a board, right? Like little cardboard cutouts even. I would pre-generate characters, level 3, give them enough options to do stuff, but not enough, to overwhelm
Rope
them.
to hang themselves?
Yep. And then what I would do is I personally would jump on D&D Beyond. I don't love it for character creation shit. I think it's very limiting for DMs, but if I'm teaching new people, I will go buy on D&D Beyond Journey Through the Radiant Citadel, Candlekeep Mysteries, Tales from the Yawning Portal, and whatever else I can find on there. There are all of these little like level 1, level 3 adventures in all of the campaign settings. Like Theros has one, Ravnica has one, Eberron has one, Spelljammer has one. And like you can go through each one of them and like play all of these really simple, low level, easy to understand stakes that are meant for new players that have either not played the game before or never played in this world. Like you've never been to Ravnica. That adventure understands that and introduces Ravnica to you, right? And then you can just run a series of these things because they're relatively cheap on D&D Beyond, and you're not going to break your bank doing that. And then I would probably have 2 session zeros, one which is kind of standard, and then one that explains, here are your options. We're going to keep it to the player's handbook. I'm going to build your classes for you, but you can choose your background and you can choose the race you want to play. Elves, dwarves, humans, half-orcs, half-elves, halflings, and gnomes, right? And describe them all, and everyone will be like, oh, I'm going to play this. That way you don't end up with Goliaths or plasmoids with new players, right? You're not going to end up with any of the weird, imbalanced Sword Coast Adventures Guide Battle Ragers and Purple Dragon Knights, right? So you're going to get the more streamlined, the more balanced, easier shit to do, right? And then you build the character sheets for them, and you give them the items, and you let them know that here, this is what you want, and you can build it for them. If the bard wants a fucking dog, and that's the only reason that they're choosing, ranger over bard, give the bard a dog. You have control over that shit. Just let them do it. Don't be rigid, right? So, number 19. We're gonna finish off with another couple of King of Rock questions. What are the funniest 3 things your character has ever caused or done?
I know there's good things, but now I gotta think. But
one of my favorite running jokes with I'm going to give you guys just a little buffer here to think about this. My favorite running joke of Terry's character, Solomon Duke, was that he had constant coffee breath, and he would always breathe in people's faces.
Yeah. Like talk in people's faces, not like
No, you get really close, and you would make a point of saying, my coffee breath is going to whisper in their ear. And it was always really funny. So
took that from my geography teacher. Shout out to Mr. Jeffries. That's where that came from.
That's awesome and unfortunate.
One of my favorite things I did, I cast reverse gravity on a ship once, and that was just really fun. Might seem a bit on the nose. A few people have maybe done that before, but it was a very fun experience for me to do that. It caused a lot of chaos, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Do I remember that, Terry? Was that you did that in my campaign, didn't you?
I did that in your campaign, yeah. Because the rule was it goes up and then it rotates. So the ship was just rotating around. It had a full crew, and then I dropped it. I think the crew on the top came out into the water, and then I dropped the spell, so the ship fell on top of them.
Yeah, just killed everybody that was on like above deck. So pretty good.
That is a good use of the spell. For me, okay, so when I was first getting into DMing, I put a little too much work and maybe emphasis into the story I was building, and didn't really think about what the players were gonna do with it. So I made an NPC that was supposed to die off immediately, right? Like he was supposed to set the scene for everybody else, establish the danger. And then my players immediately brought him back to life. And then I was just stuck with this NPC that I didn't want, because he was he was a triplet. So the other 2 were supposed to survive and then come along, and the players just kept asking me because they realized I didn't want this fucking NPC. So they made it their job to keep it alive and constantly ask me what the NPC is doing.
I love it.
I've done a bunch of stuff as a DM that I think is funny. Every once in a while I'll do something quirky or cute or interesting with an NPC. I never get to be a player. I mean, the last time I was ever really a player, I did Bargus for you, Terry, but I didn't really have any comedy moments. My character was the straight man in that group, right? He was there to heal. I played the character that the Gloomstalker assassin in Dan's campaign that murdered Tyler and Brad's characters and killed everybody and then fucked off with their favorite NPC. So like I haven't played comedic characters except I'm doing a one shot right now. It's a two shot. We knew it was going to be. I'm doing this two shot right now where I'm getting to play the path of the giant barbarian. So the idea is that he is a Goliath and he is known as Ocello the Brutalator and the Brutalator. That's what it is. Ocello the Brutalator. I didn't realize when I chose the name that Ocello is actually a word in Italian, and Dan happens to know it, and it means little bird.
Little bird.
Little bird, Ocello. Yeah. So when I announced that I'm Ocello the Brutalator, he was like, I don't know what to do with this. And it defeated him. Like he was so confused for a number of rounds trying to like say my character's name. It was completely by accident. But it didn't help that Ocello the Brutalator, who was a Goliath gladiator that could make himself large size and beat the shit out of things, was also a really soft-spoken guy, and he just wanted to be everybody's friends. And often he would run into the enemies and then offer them a truce and then say, if you want, we can give you refuge and you can be refugees and I'll introduce you to my friends. And then he would take them by the hand and walk them out of the dungeon over to where the town's guards are and say, this is my new friend, please look after him. And then go back into the dungeon and fucking wreck house. So he was a pretty funny character to play. Dan was fucking defeated. He did not know how to handle that. The last question we have is, how many times has your game group left a city or town after reducing it to rubble? My players have done this 3 times now.
Never. I've actually never had that happen.
I've never had that happen either. They did do it to a tavern. That's classic. But never for a city. Even though they're superheroes, I always make them feel very small in their city. There's thousands and thousands of people around them. There's a lot going on. I try to make them feel like they're not superior in a city.
In 3.5, it happened all the time. In 4th edition, it was less frequent, but it still happened. And in 5th edition, anytime that I've had a city or town just decimated, it's always been because the players were fighting the bad guys and the bad guys set the town up to get destroyed, right? We've had cities and towns destroyed. We've had a couple of floating cities get sunk or thrown off a waterfall. We've had, I'm trying to think, Terry, you did an evacuation one time of an entire castle and city. That was getting stepped on by an enlarged, invisible, and scry-proof Tarrasque. But
right.
there hasn't really been. I instill a level of lawfulness in my players. I discourage murder hoboism for the most part.
Yeah. I don't know, just that scale of destruction, I think I try to avoid. I am much more, I prefer the subtle destruction. I want to destroy them emotionally, and you lose something in the big picture like that.
Also, like at that point, you're fucking up people's livelihoods, and there are consequences in my homebrew campaign.
As there should be.
Yeah. So yeah, I've done evacuations. I've done city leveling level of shit, but it's been plot points that often the players were trying to avoid. And if the city sunk or got destroyed or whatever, it was usually out of their hands, and they were trying to find the best way to weather the destruction instead of even just stopping it. So I've gotten to the point, I think, in my D&D career where if we're going to be murder hobos, it's going to be an evil campaign or it's going to be one shot, right? Like I'm not really supporting that level of play anymore. Although a lot of tables will still be doing that, right?
Yeah.
So I got to ask, how murder hobo-y are your tables right now?
Mine are not very murder hobo-y. Well, not on like a grand scale. They will try their luck sometimes. If they think they can get away with it, they're a bit, they're like, lock the door. We'll take care of this. They're a bit like that, but it's not a trail of destruction.
Well, I think I was the worst offender with it in my party. And now I just started a campaign. We're like 1 session in, so I can't really say at the moment. We're gonna have to see how things pan out. Maybe James, though. I feel like it's gonna be James.
James. You have Anthony as well. James and Anthony will be your murder hobos. James especially.
I
wonder
what that says about when we get a little bit of power, even with our fantasy characters. I remember it with Titus one time, Adam, where there was that ambush at the side of the road.
Yeah.
And there was the ambush, and I was so disgusted at how shit it was that I went up and I told them off, gave them my pole arm, and just completely abused them over this. And that was a display. That was a power dominance over these NPCs. You know, that's what we do.
So I was a big believer at the time, and like even put low level threats in front of a mid tier party. You guys were like level 8 or 11 or something. Like you were getting up there in power, and these guys were clearly like CR2 bandits. And Terry just walked up and said, "Stop it! Stop it! You are an embarrassment. What would your wife think?" And like, here, you hold my weapon. And then so he hands it off to one of the bandits and turns the rest of them and said, "What is wrong with you?" And like, tore a strip off of them. It was fucking hilarious. And they apologized and gave him his weapon back, and they slunk back to town, like absolutely humiliated by this moment.
But that was because I knew I could just kill them, you know. And I think that's when we start to become murder hobos. Like you get to level 3 or 4, and the shopkeeper's not giving you the price that you want, and you're like, "Well, we can kill you now. Like we have level 3 ability now." So that's where it starts, I think.
I remember the moment that you decided to not be a murder hobo, and it was the moment Jamie was playing a barbarian, you were playing a fighter, and you guys had a captive, and the captive was it was an orc. He was tied up, and he was on his knees behind a wagon, and you guys were interrogating him, and you refused to be helpful because the rolls just weren't going in your favor, right? But instead of waiting and trying again later, Jamie said, "All right, I'm going to cut his head off then." And Terry, your character went over and was like, "Hey, you're not." And you reached out and grabbed his sword by the blade and said, "I'm not going to let you kill him." And Jamie turned to me and said, "I'm going to push my sword through his hand if he doesn't fucking let go." And Terry looked at me and said, "You know what? It's not worth my time and effort. Fine, kill the orc, but I'm having no part of this. This is a bad decision." Turned around and like walked away. And that was very much, we never really had a murder hobo opportunity after that, because in that moment, Jamie saw that there could be nuance, because he was very used to burn down the tavern and leave no prisoners, right? So I really appreciate that level of nuance in characters. I will say though, James is a murder hobo. I ran an evil campaign. Terry, you sat in on that one.
Yeah.
That was, you and Dave were not necessarily out there to murder everything. You were out there for your own personal gain. Everybody else was there for bloodshed.
Yeah, that's right. And it threw me off because I wasn't accustomed to that. Because you know, the table that I was with before, we weren't like, it was a completely different dynamic. It was a very different game. Yeah.
Which is not to say we didn't have fun. That evil campaign was a blast. That was great. We got lots of laughs out of it.
So yeah, it was great.
But yeah, it really does depend on your table. Do you guys have any final thoughts? Anything you want to circle back on for this mailbag? Anything you'd like to try again on an answer?
I just want everyone at home to know that it's hard, right? You guys think long and hard about your questions, and sometimes it's like you're asking us 15 things in one, when it's like a race, class, and background for each character in this series. It's a lot. So I hope you don't think we're sometimes that, you know, we're trying to come up with answers on the fly. It's tough. Listen to me taking it all dead seriously now. Now I'm like completely invested. I'm starting my mailbag answer. Seemed not great.
Some of these I do wish I could see beforehand, right? Like know what I'm getting into, and I would have a better response.
I do everything in my power to collect these, and unless there's something very direct, which is like, hey, what's literally the best mount by the stat blocks, I will actually go look that up, and I'll throw the answer in so that whoever's reading it has that at their fingertips. But for the most part, with the shit like we got today, I will skim it when I copy and paste it into our spreadsheet, but I don't read it. So it's a surprise for me a lot of the time. I got to say, though, for anybody else writing questions, think about the different people on the podcast. Stop asking me questions and start asking others questions, because I am on most of the episodes and you know my opinions already. And the strength of this podcast at all, it's Mimic. The strength is that it's different people with different opinions and different experiences coming at it with different inspirations. So ask Dave and James and Kyle and Megan, and ask Roman a question, because hell, he's doing stuff. Like, throw it out there. Throw these questions out, and we'll see who's gonna answer what. Because I think, Terry, you and I have done dozens of these now.
No, I'm selfish with this one though. I do like it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So ask Terry questions.
But I do like it.
All right, so that's it for this mailbag. We'll probably do another one, or rather, we will definitely do another one the next time that we get another 20 questions in from you guys. Feel free to ask on our subreddit r/itsAmimic, or if you are one of the patrons, go onto the Patreon Discord, and you will see that there's an entire channel there that is dedicated to the mailbag questions. And often you get an immediate answer to a lesser degree, and then we answer it again on the podcast anyway. So thank you for listening to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, www.itsamimic.com, a store with some It's a Mimic merch, and a Patreon. These episodes and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. I feel like all of our trolls have stopped asking questions. Like they've done the like, what do you think a nutsack tastes like? We don't get those questions anymore.
Yeah, they were all legitimate questions.
Yeah, like the only weird one this time around is the Mummy. What's your X-rated Mummy movie? Which I mean, clearly is Sexy Stepmom. I'm gonna say 14 was better than the previous 13, but you could make an argument for 12.
I remember it was an X-rated mommy movie. I just gave a regular mommy movie.
Harry's sitting there. I prefer my mother's chaste. Thank you.
Yeah. Bird is British slang for girl, though. So in British slang, I said girl box. So works out.
There you go.
It's still legit.
There you go. Terry rescuing us, putting us back in the R rating when we almost got away from it.